So what is going on with the voting bills in Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania? And what is this H.R. 1 bill, the For the People Act? Let's start with the stolen elections. No, not Trump's wild accusations. Over 60 lawsuits were dismissed because there was no fraud evidence. Voting machine company Dominion sued Trump's lawyer for defamation. Her defense? She said no reasonable person would believe what she said. No, the stolen election that I'm talking about is the state legislature elections. After the last census, the Republican incumbents in those state houses gerrymandered the districts so they have more seats even though fewer people voted for them. That's the steal. Now, Democrats have pulled some shenanigans in the past, but they've figured out now that most people vote Democrat. So they just need to get most people to vote. Sadly, instead of trying to win over voters with ideas and policy, the Republicans have decided to keep Democrats from voting. It's been death by 1,000 cuts. The Republican states have been improving elections by a lot of little things, such as removing people from voting registration if they don't respond to a mailed notice, or moving or closing polling places, limiting voting hours, etc. So how do these measures improve voting? They all result in Democrats voting less. That's the improvement. Surprise, the closed polling places and moved polling places are in areas that vote for Democrats. These restrictions are perfectly illegal unless the federal government does something, like it used to do. The Voting Rights Act required southern states to get federal approval before election changes. Why? Because southern states imposed restrictions on voting while black. But in 2013, the Supreme Court threw out the federal approvals as not needed, since racism was history. Southern states immediately passed a number of laws making it harder to vote, cutting early voting, eliminating same-day registration, keeping polls from staying open late for long lines, and ending government voter registration drives. Funny, all these changes reduced black voting, and blacks tended to vote Democrat. With the pandemic, states expanded early voting and voting by mail, also called absentee ballots. This seems safe in Republican states, since Republican voters historically use vote by mail more, and lawmakers were worried their older voters would be afraid to come to the polls. Trump then sabotaged his own party by discouraging vote by mail, and the Democrats started using it. States such as Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania went to Biden. Republicans addressed this Democratic affront by introducing bills to make it even harder for Democrats to vote. The cover story is reducing fraud. For example, voting by mail is being restricted because of potential fraud, which of course didn't exist when Republicans were being elected. Here's the Republican definition of fraud: voting Democrat. The Georgia law does expand voting rights in some areas, such as early in-person voting, which coincidentally Republicans use more. Many states, such as Georgia, don't have voter initiatives, and due to gerrymandering, a majority Democratic vote doesn't change Republican state control. So the Democrats, being the poor sports they are trying to counter these state election moves with a federal bill, H.R. 1, the For the People's Act. In a typical Democratic overreach, they want to require states to let Democrats vote too. H.R. 1 would eliminate gerrymandering, provide automatic voter registration, require voting by mail and early voting, and basically counter every trick the Republicans have been using the last 10 years to reduce Democrat voting. There are also provisions restricting lobbying, improving election security, reforming ethics laws, etc., since Democrats can't write a bill that's less than 700 pages. But the Republicans have a weapon to kill H.R. 1 and keep those liberal Democrats from voting. It's called the filibuster. See my first video on this channel to learn more about the filibuster. This should help you understand why, when we scold China and Russia for their lack of democracy, they say, "Look who's talking."